Well, I just flew back from Brisbane and boy are my arms tired. Alright, let's talk about AEW Grand Slam.
Hello.
And welcome to Ricky on Wrestling. Now, in this video, we're going to be talking about all of my thoughts, my feelings, my impressions, and my review of AEW Grand Slam. But I need to start off this video by saying, I know in my predictions video, I said something about, taking some footage while I was up there doing a little vlog, little travel vlog of my time in Brisbane. But got a bit lit at the airport before we flew up to Brizzy. Got to film a bunch of stuff. The footage I did get, not great, but here's some of that now.
We are loading from the rear.
We are loading from the rear. Just as God intended.
Great match. Great match.
What a mark. And that's about all I ended up getting on video. So I'm going to structure this video like a bit of a compliment sandwich. We're going to start with the good. Then we're going to squeeze some bad in the middle. And then we'll finish off with some good on top. Let's kick off with the bottom layer of bread, the good. And this good is going to be just based around the vibes of the night, how everything went. And it was probably one of the most fun shows I've been to in a very, very long time. It was great. The best part about it, I think, was just that the crowd was hot the entire night. Like, this is probably the hottest crowd I've ever been a part of. And I went to Super Showdown. I went to Elimination Chamber. I've been to a bunch of indie shows here in Australia. I've been to a bunch of like WWE house shows when they used to come out and do those little tours around Australia. And the crowd was just insane. And I know that the show has come out now and people have seen it all over social media, just the reactions when certain wrestlers come out. I have to say off the top that everyone's singing along to Metalingus, Cope, his theme song. It might be the single coolest thing I've ever been a part of at a wrestling show. It was awesome. I know it's been done before, I think, when they went to Canada and he was on the show. They did it there as well, but just it was insanely cool to be a part of that moment with Cope, because it's probably the last time he's going to be in Australia. They did say they're coming back next year, but whether he's still a part of the company then, whether he's hung up the boots by then, we don't know. Obviously, he's sort of talked about retirement recently, so there's no guarantee he'll come back. But just to be in the stadium or in the arena for that moment was really, really cool, and it got to me. And like watching it back, it got to me again.
Twice. Undefeated since returning from that injury at Double or Nothing in May of last year.
But the whole night, the crowd was insane. And even for the Ring of Honor show beforehand, which everyone was kind of like, it's Ring of Honor, it'll be what it'll be. Chris Jericho's there, woohoo. But that the crowd was insanely hot from that point. Like, the minute that the first match from Ring of Honor started all the way through to the last match of AEW, crowd was insane. So that is just a testament to how much, A, wrestling fans in Australia are passionate, and B, we just don't get enough stuff down here, and more companies should come down here. I know it's a long way. We're on the other side of the fucking world. And it sucks, but when we get a chance, we go all out. And I know I'm going to talk about this in a sec too. Obviously, they couldn't sell out 60,000 seats for Suncorp Stadium, and they had to move to the Brisbane Entertainment Centre. But I do feel like, and this is something that I had a bit of a criticism last year for Elimination Chamber, was when you have an open air stadium, you do lose a bit of the atmosphere. Being in an enclosed, like whatever it was, 10 to 12,000 seats they have at the entertainment center in Brisbane, it just made everything feel bigger because everything is enclosed and every cheer and shout gets sort of reverberated around the arena. It makes it feel even bigger than it is. So I feel like you do lose a little bit of that atmosphere when you go bigger, open air, all the noise sort of just escapes out the top of the stadium. So having it in that arena, it made it feel bigger than it was. So that was a good thing that came out of a bad situation where we all sort of were expecting this huge stadium show and we didn't get it. But what they ended up putting on, I think, made up for that in part. And we'll get to the meat of the sandwich in a bit, where still kind of pissed. And then on top of that, just all the wrestling on the show was sick. It was really, really good. Every match had some cool moments, had some cool spots. There was no real downer or piss break match throughout the night. Everything was like, oh, I want to be seated and I want to see this. Whether it was, main event, the first match on the card, everything was like, I want to be here and experience this in its entirety. So yeah, I thought just in general, the show they put on was great. Worth the price of accommodation and tickets and flights and everything to go up there and just be a part of that. And honestly, I think the Edge reaction, I'm going to keep saying that, Cope reaction and just seeing Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay wrestle again and seeing Tony Storm win, those 4 things worth the price of admission alone. Everything else was just a bonus, and it was a really, really cool bonus. So now we move on to the meat. The meat in this scenario is not the good thing. The meat is the bad thing, because in the middle of the sandwich, we're going good, bad, good. Everything else, everything else surrounding this show, it wasn't good. And I think a lot of people's issues have been sort of broadcast online. I'm going to add to that noise right now. And this is only from someone who went to the show. This is, if you were just watching it at home on TV, you would have no idea about any of this. But I'm just telling you as someone who went to the show, these are the negatives. 1, Brisbane Entertainment Centre is in the fucking sticks. Oh my God, it is so far out of the city. We didn't realize how far out it was until we got out there and we're like, this is you can't see the city from here. You go out past the airport, past the northern suburbs, you're in literally the bush. Yeah, you're so far out. And the big sticker with that was getting home. Now, we booked our accommodation under the presumption that we were going to Suncorp. We booked our accommodation right next to Suncorp Stadium. We were literally maybe a 5 to 10 minute walk away. Because it got moved, our Uber to get back, because they said that there was free PT, but we looked at the PT schedule and it would have been 3 different buses to get back into the city. And it would have taken over about an hour and 15 minutes to get from where we were back to our accommodation if we took PT. Now, they did make PT free, public transport free, for people who went to the show, which is great. That's cool. However, an hour and a half to travel, I think it was 15 kilometers, which is an amount of miles, look it up yourself, just seemed kind of wild. So we were like, screw that, we're tired, we're knackered, we want to just go home back to the hotel. Let's get an Uber. That Uber cost $112. That hurt. That was brutal. The other thing, the merch situation, I don't know if much of this has been talked about online. When we got there, we were like, oh, let's go and line up for merch. Apparently at the stadium, or the arena there's only one merch stand. Everyone was lined up for merch. We sort of walked through the front doors of the arena. And as you walk through the front doors, to the right is where the merch stand was. And in front of us was the line. But then we looked to the left, and the line just kept going and going and going. Yeah, there was not a chance we were going to get any merch. And even a friend of ours who went up separate to us, by the time we got there, he was already in line. He was probably halfway down the line. And he said that he got there maybe 5 minutes after the gates opened and he got straight into the merch line. By the time he got to the front, there was no shirts left. There was hats and posters for the show. That was it. So the merch situation, not great. The other thing, this is not the fault of anybody except for the sun god. The weather was bad. It was so hot. It was so humid. And I think that led to sort of a lot of people it was the cherry on top of the shit pie, where it was okay, we've had to move out to this arena outside of the city. There's no merch, this and that. Just the weather just on top of that made everyone a bit grumpy. Once we got into the show, it was fine because there was aircon in the stadium. But at least from my perspective, I was exhausted even probably before we got there. Mostly because I've been out just exploring Brisbane all day in this 30 something degrees, which again, Fahrenheit, look it up. But the humidity was 85%. So it just felt sticky the entire day. That kind of added to the whole thing. But again, this is for someone who went there. It doesn't matter for anyone who just watched the show on TV. These are just my negatives. This is the meat in the sandwich. I'm getting through it. We're going to get to the nice top piece of white, beautiful bread in a sec and talk about all the other positives from the show. It was a lot. It was a lot to sort of deal with, just the extra travel, paying out the ass. All the drinks were really expensive, which you kind of expect. There was no merch. It was really hot. It kind of sucked. At the end of the day, the show was good enough to sort of overcome a lot of these things, but unfortunate. But again, a few of those things aren't AEW's fault. A couple of them feel like they kind of were. And I want to say this before we move on to the final positives and wrap this up and sort of run through each match and do my actual review, because I've ranted for a while now. They have said they're coming back next year, which is cool. And I think they deserve to come back. They did a really, really good job. I'm trying to leave my bias at the door. Just do it in Melbourne. Maybe Sydney, but just do it in Melbourne. If you want to do that 10 to 15,000 seat stadium, we have so many of those and they're in the city. They're like a suburb outside of the CBD. Extra travel wouldn't be a thing. If you booked the MCG and then we're like, we can't do the MCG, it's 100,000 people. How would we even think of doing that in the first place? And you go, oh, let's do like a 10 or 15,000 seat stadium. They're in the same precinct. All the stadiums are in the same suburb. In general, I think Melbourne is a much better city to host something like this. Even Perth last year for Elimination Chamber had its positives and negatives when it comes to getting the most people to come to a show. Melbourne, I think, is the most popular city right now. We have a massive indie wrestling scene here in Melbourne. So you have a massive swath of built-in fans that I think you could do a good job at selling out a larger stadium than we got in Brisbane, because Brisbane, again, it's a pretty far city away from like the major population centers in Australia. Do it in Melbourne. At worst, do it in Sydney. I don't want to go to Sydney, but I'll go to Sydney to go see wrestling. But I just think do it where your population centers live. That's my rant. I'm done. No more bias. Brisbane's a lovely city. I had a great time. It was so good. It's one of the most beautiful cities in Australia. It is gorgeous. Moving on now. We go away from the negatives. We move back to the positives. The last layer of the sandwich. Let's go through all the matches bit by bit. Break them down, why they were awesome. So it started with Ring of Honor. And first match to happen. My God, my words aren't working. Hang on, I need to bring up the match card here. It was the Outrunners and Bandito against the Learning Tree. Chris Jericho, Big Bill, Brian Keith. This match is memorable for one reason and one reason alone. Big Bill is over as fuck in Australia. I don't know if he is in America, but the crowd popped huge. I know he's supposed to be a heel, but we loved him. We loved him. He's a big boy. We love him. We love our big boys here in Australia, apparently. And he was sick. He was awesome. Best part of the Ring of Honor show probably was just the crowd reactions to him. Every time he got the hot tag, crowd erupted. Even when he's on the apron waiting for the tag, the crowd was just still chanting his name, interspersed with a lot of chants of "fuck you, Jericho," which was kind of funny. Being on the same team, it was like, fuck this guy, but this guy we like. And gave the crowd a nice little acknowledgement as they sort of finished their match and walked off. But this was a really fun match. The Outrunners are insanely fun. Bandito is insanely cool at what he does. Great luchador. This was just a really good way to kick off the entire night. Then we had Lee Moriarty against Robbie Eagles. Obviously, Robbie Eagles being the local boy. Big old pop from the crowd for him. These two put on a really, really fun match. I wasn't really aware of the pure wrestling rules before this. I don't really get to watch much Ring of Honor because I have no idea where to watch it anymore. First time watching a pure match, and yeah, it was fun. It's a cool gimmick to it. So that was good, but it was always good to see Robbie Eagles. I've seen him a bunch of times at Australian shows, and he's always awesome. He's always just so goddamn good. So this was really, really fun. Then there was an sort of unadvertised match that happened. We had Mark Devers versus Tommy Knight. Tommy Knight is a local guy. Got to have a chance on a Ring of Honor show. So that was cool. It was two big sweaty men slapping meat, and the crowd was all about that. It was really, really good. Just a really sort of two big men just hitting each other really, really hard, which, yeah, sometimes there is a place for that in wrestling, and sometimes it fucking rules. And in this match, it did. It was good. Next up, we had Sons of Texas, Dustin Rhodes and Sammy Guevara against MXM Collection. Both teams insanely entertaining for different reasons. MXM kind of have that, pretty boy, kind of a little bit Edge and Christian, a little bit Eminem from back in the day, just like, these sort of show-off personalities that really came through in the match. And then just to see Dustin Rhodes, I'd never seen Dustin Rhodes perform live. That was really, really cool just to see him in person and doing his thing. So yeah, great match. And then the final match, this is probably, the crowd ran out of steam a little bit because we'd been so hot for the previous four matches. Athena versus Alex Windsor. We'll say, feel bad for Alex Windsor. She came out and got no reaction. There was just nothing, which, yeah, that's got to be rough coming out in front of 10,000 people and people not even like cheering or booing or just really knowing who you are. Felt odd to have this as the last match, but it was the championship match for the women's Ring of Honor Women's Championship. I understand why they put it on last, but at the same time, yeah, the crowd was kind of dead for most of this. It did pick up through the match and sort of built its way up to a really, really cool finish. But yeah, I think the crowd kind of was like, let's just take a break and just save some energy. So, but all in all, 5 really, really fun matches kick off the night. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. I didn't expect this Ring of Honor show. I think it was only announced like the week leading up to AEW. So kind of last minute, but ended up being really, really fun. So a great way to kick off the night. And now we get to the main card. Kicked off with Will Ospreay, Kenny Omega against the Don Callis family. Like I said, Will Ospreay, Kenny Omega, two of the biggest pops of the night. These guys are over as hell. They are two of the best to ever do it. Two of the best of this generation of wrestlers coming through now. They just know how to work and work so well together. Their styles really complement each other. In a tag, you've got Will, who's doing like the high flying stuff, but I know he has changed his style a little bit to be a bit more hard hitting. And then you have Kenny, who just everything he does with this realism and this believability that I don't think anyone else really has in the business. Like, I believe every single one of the things he does in the ring, every move, every punch, every kick, every knee, just has this legitimacy behind it that you only get for being as good as you are for as long as you have been. So just seeing him work again was so good. And then Kyle Fletcher and Takeshita worked great as heels. Both had their cool moments. I think everyone in this got a really, really cool high spot at some point or another. The only thing I will say, it went a bit long in the tooth. It was the longest match on the card at 23 minutes and 50 seconds. Kind of went about 2 or 3 spots over its welcome, and I feel like perhaps we'll talk about it later. Some matches had their time cut because of that, but any minutes I get to soak in Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega, I will take, because they are special wrestlers. And it was cool to see him perform. Next up, Mercedes Moné defeated Harley Cameron for the AWTBS Championship. Crowd is not a fan of Mercedes Moné. Let's just say that much. Real big fans of Harley Cameron. Apparently did not know this before going in, but she's like a local. She was from like Queensland. So crowd was massively behind her. Mercedes Moné, not so much. People booing her, trying to work out if this is like legitimate heat or if this is like fuck off, go home heat. Who knows? But she's a heel. She's getting booed. She's doing her job. Doing her job very well. Solid match. Had a lot of fun with this one again. Some cool spots. You got the little puppet made its appearance. Crowd got a massive laugh from that one. But yeah, this was sort of predictable the way it was going to go. Mercedes isn't dropping that strap internationally. And Harley Cameron, as much as she is like a local girl, they were never going to strap her up. She's not sort of high enough in the hierarchy, but I think this match was a good showcase of what she can do to sort of legitimately climb that hierarchy, to be a genuine shot to take that title off Mercedes down the track. Next up, we had the Death Riders, John Mox, Claudio, against Cope and Jay White in a Brisbane brawl, which we definitely got the brawl element of this match. Cope coming out insane. You can see me briefly in the broadcast when he first like comes out and does his entrance and runs to the side. You'll see like a white t-shirt. That's me. He came right up to where we were sitting. I might have a show photo of us where we were. We were very, very close to sort of the entrance ramp. Like I said, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, and just being a part of that sing along was so amazing. And then Jay White got a huge pop. He's a New Zealander, but you know, it's Australia, close enough. We'll take him. He's ours for the night. And then Death Riders come out, and these are fuck you, go away boos, I feel. Going into this, as I said in my predictions, I don't watch the product that much. The Death Riders story, I've seen a few like think pieces and videos about it, and people being like, where is this going? What is this doing? This is really doing nothing for company, for the title, and whoever takes it off Mox eventually, what really does it do for them? And I don't know if it does much for them. This really did feel like, we don't like you kind of heat. Not for the reasons that you're a heel. It's just like, we don't like the direction the company is pushing you in. We don't like where this is going, and we want change. And that's kind of the heat that I felt. And then like after the match, so the match goes on, we get a couple of cool spots. Cope jumping off, he went into the stands and jumped off like a bit of a fence railing onto, I think it was Claudio up there. There was like table spots. We didn't get Spike, which was weird, because like the whole build up was like Mox had the plank with the spikes in it, the nails in it, bang it against that briefcase that has the championship in it. And then we get a hardcore match, and he doesn't bring out Spike for even like any spot at all, which was kind of weird. Regardless, Wheeler Yuta showed up, smacked around Jay White with a belt. Jay White no selling it. I think brought the crowd back to life in this match a little bit. Kind of a bit dead through this, but brought them right back into it. But then the end, it was the choke out. Yeah, crowd did not like that one. I know they're probably supposed to not like it. That's the whole point of the ending, but it was almost like, really, we're going to do this. This is how we're finishing the match. This is how Cope goes out in his last match in Australia. I wish this match got a little bit of extra time as well. It was 14 minutes. I feel like it could have gone on a little bit longer. It is what it is, but yeah, just the atmosphere around this match was probably better than the match itself. But in saying that, there was no bad matches on this card. This was probably just the low point, just because of who was involved and and the outcome of the match just didn't really sit right with a lot of people in the audience. Next up, we had Kazuchika Okada versus Buddy Matthews for the AEW Continental Championship. Apparently, Buddy injured himself getting into the ring. We kind of saw something from where we were that he just like, he got in the ring. We didn't obviously see him roll his ankle, but we saw him like limping in the ring and we were like, oh, that's weird. And then obviously he was limping after the match. During the match, he seemed fine, probably just playing hurt. Hopefully it's nothing serious. Hopefully it's just like he twisted his ankle. It sucks for a night or two, and then he's all good in a couple of days' time. Really solid match. It was cool seeing Okada. I'd seen him a couple of times when New Japan used to come to Australia every now and then. He's just, again, he's up there with Ospreay and Omega as just someone who can work their ass off no matter what, no matter who's across the ring from them. And Buddy's just Buddy. He's an awesome worker. He, again, is one of those guys that everything feels a bit more legitimate, a bit more real whenever he's in the ring. So that was cool. And again, making it all about me, I flipped Okada off as he was coming back up the ramp after the match. And he looked me like dead in the eye. He's like spat at me or something. I didn't think it was me. And then like the people I was sitting with, like, he was looking directly at you when you flipped him off. And I was like, oh shit. I pissed off Okada. Fantastic. Yeah, good match. Obviously, Okada wins. I never thought in a million years Buddy would get this title off him here, but it was a good showing. And lastly, we had Timeless Toni Storm defeat Mariah May for the AEW Women's Championship. This was great. This was everything a Toni Storm match should be. There was drama. There was overacting. There was just everything that makes Timeless Toni Storm a great character in wrestling. We also had Luther, her like usher or whatever his role is. He came out of the crowd at the start to introduce her. They play her old Rockstar theme, and then it transitions into the Timeless Toni Storm theme. It was a beautiful piece of character work. Just to have her come out to that was great. The match was awesome, but I do feel like at a certain point it did get cut for time just because of the roll-up finish. Now, I don't know if they intended that to be the finish the entire time, but it did feel a little bit too early to get a roll-up. However, in saying that, the crowd popped massive. The crowd went insane when they hit the 3 count because we were expecting, oh no, it's a roll-up. It'll be a couple of roll-ups back and forth or just like a spot that involves a roll-up. But no, they got the 3 count and the crowd just kind of took a second to realize what had happened and then exploded. Biggest reaction of the night by far, biggest singular reaction of the night. And so I don't know if that was their intention all along. If it was, well played, because it got us. Like, we were not expecting, like, I'm sitting back with a drink in my hand, just like watching the match and just like, oh, yeah, it's a roll up. And then they hit the 3 count and the place just lost its shit, which is cool to be a part of those moments where you don't, like, where they actually get you, where they get you to the point where like, you're not expecting this to be the finish and they get you. And they got us. They did a really good job. Leading up to that point, great back and forth the entire time. It looked like early on, they were going for almost like a Brock Lesnar thing with Toni Storm just like hitting suplex after suplex after suplex. And the people I was with, we were discussing like, are they going to do like a Brock Lesnar thing here where she just destroys Mariah May, just like suplex after suplex after suplex? No offense from Mariah, but eventually it did end up being a bit of a 50-50 match. And then that quick roll-up pin was just out of nowhere, and it got a really good reaction from the crowd. I don't know if her promo after was televised. I don't think it was, because she was immediately out of character and just back to being Toni Storm. The promo was really good. It was a good way to send us home. She talked about coming to that arena and seeing wrestling like years ago, and being there with her mum, and her mum was there tonight, and it was just really, really heartfelt, cool promo to send us all home on. So yeah, everything was just, it was a good night. Everything was great. Like, there's nothing from a wrestling perspective to really complain about. I have seen some stuff online, and I'm aware of this tribalism. I have been for a while, and I've made my own cracks at AEW in the past, but nothing really serious. When it comes down to it, having been to WWE shows and local wrestling shows here in Melbourne, and now an AEW show, when you're there, it's all just wrestling at the end of the day. It all feels the same. It's just bigger names and bigger reactions and bigger crowds. But wrestling, like shows I've been to where it's been like 200 people in a pub band room here in Australia versus, 40 odd thousand at Elimination Chamber or 80,000 at Super Showdown at the MCG, or the 10,000 we had here. Once you sort of move past all the tribalism bullshit of like, who's a better company, who has better wrestlers, who does better things, it's all just wrestling. It all feels the same once you're in the arena and watching the show. Now, the presentation on TV may be different, and the way that, stories are crafted and all that may change from company to company or booker to booker, but at the end of the day, it's all just pro wrestling and it's all just supposed to be fun. And this was a fun show. And Elimination Chamber last year was a fun show. And Wrestle Rock down at the Corner Hotel here in Melbourne is a fun show. So it's all just wrestling at the end of the day. And I think all the tribalism bullshit is something that I don't want to engage in. I'll make my cracks at AEW, but I'll definitely make cracks at WWE at the same time. And I think the idea behind this channel and what I want to talk about is just positive side of wrestling. I don't want to get caught up in any of this bullshit. I just want to talk about wrestling because it's fun and it's a fun art form. And it's cool to be a part of this sort of like still niche little thing that we all like, and we all kind of feel this connection because we do like it and understand it in a way that other people don't. It's kind of the same thing with being a fan of metal music, which is I am. It's a lot of people look at it and go, that's weird and I don't understand it. And like, well, okay, that's fine, but I do. I understand it. I understand wrestling, and it's fun. And can it not just be fun? Can we not? Enough with the tribalism. It's silly. If you don't like something, great, don't watch it. If you don't like something, don't fucking talk about it. How about that? Like, that's as simple as it is. Yeah, I just once you're there, once you're in the moment, like I guarantee you, anybody that is a dyed-in-the-wool WWE fan and has no time and no patience for AEW, no respect for what they do. If you had to take him to that show the other night, sat him down in the crowd with with all the reactions to all the wrestlers and all the wrestling in the ring, they would have had a good time. And that is as simple as it is, because once you're in the arena, once you sat down and watching, all that washes away. You just realize it's just pro wrestling. That's just what it is. It's just this art form. There's a different brand on the outside of the building, but at the end of the day, it's just the same. And this was as fun, if not more fun, than any show I've ever been to. So that's my little bit on tribalism at the end. I'm sorry to be preachy, but it is what it is. I'm seeing it online. People like having a go at AEW for all this. And I did criticize them in the meat. I criticized them in the meat of the sandwich, but none of that had to do with the wrestling. All of it had to do with just they kind of fucked up and just overplayed their hand and thought they could fill up a 60,000 seat stadium. They couldn't. It is what it is. Anyway, this is a really long video. I'm sorry. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that shit. I appreciate you. I see you. I love you. That was weird. I'm going to finish the video now. Okay. Bye.